in your capable hands. Thank
Oh.
you very much.
Good luck then. Right, I'll take it my speakers, microphone's working.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I'll take that's a nod from Steve, it's working okay. If not, everybody can hear me in your way anyway. May not hear me on Zoom, but they'll hear me in your way. So, just asked to give a couple of minutes of what's happened this last 18 months for me. Well, most of you know we've got a shop in Hutton-le-Hall, me and my wife. We've been closed for almost a year out of that 18 months. Me and I'd say about 30 colleagues who are professional woodturners have set up doing IRDs, interactive remote demonstrations. That's been a very steep learning curve because prior to that we just stood here and turned and that was it. We've had to get computers, webcams and all the interfaces what goes through, software and everything. To give you an idea, about £2,000 of equipment we've spent, but that's enabled us to actually have an income through demonstrating to clubs like I've demonstrated for riding, I think 6 times last year. So that's why I'm going to make it up as I go along tonight, because I've done so much, it's finding something new. So it's been very hard. Some of my colleagues and friends have virtually given up demonstrating or teaching. Andrew Hall's one of them, which you'll know as a hat man. He's going to carry on the larger shows or interactive demonstrations, but actually he's not going out to any more demonstrations or teaching. So he's another demonstrator what we've lost off the circuit in a way. But he feels quite happy to be at home, demonstrate on his lathe, let people watch him remotely. Plus side for me, no travelling, so that's a reduction to the clubs. Because overnight, Tuesday night, and I mean Tuesday night, I was demonstrated to an American club. So you can imagine the time difference. So I started at 9 o'clock at night until midnight. So it could have been worse, could have been started at midnight. But to go over to America would have been thousands of pounds. Basically, they got the same price as most clubs in this country. Because I would just stood at home with webcams and camcorders around me. So it's opened up the opportunity for me to demonstrate to a wider audience and for clubs like yourself to have demonstrators from America, Australia, anywhere in the world or even the UK, what's not been financially viable. Because as John said, when I was chairman, 1 or 2 people were asking for people like Mark Sanger, what's down Dorset. Well, we were looking at several £100, and I think about £500 I think was quoted at one point. The club just said, we can't afford that. I'm going back about 10 years. Must be since I was chairman. So now we'll be able to afford a gentleman like him or any ladies from anywhere in the world for a considerably less price. So it will help clubs get more demonstrators in from worldwide and see lots of different techniques which don't have in this country. Because like John said, you can be turning for ages, but you watch a different demonstrator, different ideas completely of how to turn. Also, what is safe and what's not safe. And I've watched some, what I thought were top-class world turners, which they are. Some of the safety leaves a lot to be desired. So I think in this country, we're certainly on top of safety. Too much so, let you decide. So, let's start with a demonstration. Any questions of anything tonight, please ask. Whether the techniques, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, please ask. I can then reply straight away and say, right, look, this is how I'm doing it, but this is an alternative way. Break time, if we have, I don't know if you have a break time now or not. And you say, well, how do you do that? It could be too late to ask because that time's gone. So, yeah, please ask. And I know break time, I might have a queue here asking me. I don't mind. Come and ask me at break time. I don't charge extra. Oh, not want to go tell the treasurer anyway. So, right, go start with something very, very simple, but the simple thing I'm going to make is an apple. It sounds very simple. I'm going to show you the holding techniques, which I use for turning wood. So that will allow you to use this method, what I'm going to show you for other objects in returning mode. Am I on? Yeah. I promise I won't lean forward too much. So I'm just going to do something very simple and just use my fingers against the side of wood to roughly get the centre. I'm not too bothered, I could just sort of guesstimate it. I'm going to do it at that end. It's just something you get used to. But with having step centres at one end, I virtually can just put it very lightly between centres and just spin it and see if it's pretty close. And this one is. So then, fully tighten up. Different way to mine. So, again, I've just checked the toe rest. I've just put the short one on because I don't need a long one for this piece. And again, spin it round. So, don't want to insult people what's expert turns, but spin the roughing gouge, 45-degree bevel angle is what I use. Speed for this, it's a 500 at moment. I want about 1500 to 2000 because if I go too slow, it's really bumpy. So, increase the speed to at least 1500. Let's forget it. Also, that's 1600. It's just smoothed out a bit. Went through a bit of a bumpy session when it came. And now, that is a lot easier. It's a lot smoother for me to turn. Long term, it can have effect if I get a lot of vibration on my hands. So there's a lot of unforeseen. Everybody thinks lathes accidents, there'll be a tool or piece of wood hurting you. It's actually for us the dust and dermatitis, etc. So use common sense. If you start sneezing a lot and it's the same material you use every time, wear a dust mask. I'd recommend a dust mask anyway. And stitching after you turn to a particular type of wood. Barrier cream. So simple remedies will ensure you can carry on turning in a safe manner. So again, just angling the flute slightly in the direction I'm going on. One thing you can do is just roll your gouges real slightly and use a different part, what you've not used before, so you get 3 times the life out of your tool before it needs sharpening. Now, I've seen we're on a record chuck. I don't know which way this is showing. This is a simple jig. And this part here is what I need for diameter for a spriget. And this is what I need at this end here for a recess. So I don't need to set calipers, measure, or do anything. I just use this as a sizer. So again, I could just put it on there, roughly guess it, where the centre is, and then just put a pencil mark on, and then just go around there, and that's giving me a basic idea of where I want to be. Again, I'll leave this out so you can get a close-up for it, but when I take my chuck off, I'll show you how it works. So now, I can just go down here to my pencil mark, you'll have heard of the expression, measure twice, cut once. So I've only took a very narrow amount off there. I'm just going to put that over, and it just won't fit fully, but it's close enough. So I'm happy with that. Now I can take my full width off. I just want to go another part cut. So it's held firmly in the chuck. Now, depending on you make a chuck, depends whether you put a dovetail on here or not. The record ones are parallel jaws down the bottom and a little beak on the top, as we call it. and that requires a parallel spriget, where some of the older chucks require a dovetail to grip on. I'm just going to clean this end off slightly so it doesn't foul the bottom of the jaws. So that's first stage done. Wait when that stops, and line. I've got that. I can take my centre out. Right, let me show you. Get the chuck off. On this. Right, that's it. Right, put that over there a second. Put that there. Is not on centre of screen at the moment for chuck. Yep. Right. A perfect circle you achieve when there's about 3 to 4 millimetres, about 1/8 of an inch gap between each jaws. So to make this, what I do is measure the external and measure the internal from opposite sides. So then that represents the diameter I need to make a spriget, as so. That will be the diameter I need to cut a recess. So I've got one for each set of jaws I've got. So I don't have to set dividers each time, measure each time. I just use something as simple as that. The other thing when I've got these off at the moment is a misconception again, that if you've got a really large item and you've no big jaws, open your jaws right out and that will grip better. Some of you will already know this is not a fact. I have simple ring here. Right, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but where these black lines are on my piece of wood is the only point of contact that the jaws are making with that recess. So, if I just spin it round like I tell you, it's gripping on about 40 millimetres when it's correct size, times 4 is 160 millimetres when I went to school. With them open down as they are, they're only gripping on 12 millimetre on that small section there, which equals 48 millimetres. So there is a big difference of the surface area with when you open the jaws are like this. So people believe better grip. No, it's a very small surface area you're gripping on. So always try to go for the optimum size. I know what these are, but your chucks could be different. But just turn, and you've virtually seen that forms a perfect circle. Take your measurements off that, and that will make sure that you will have a perfect spriget. Because a lot of vibration, what you sometimes can have on a lathe, is down to incorrect size spriggets. So that is one thing to try and make sure is you get correct size spriggets and recesses. So apples, pears, and a lot of things like this. Just got to go down with the party tuck. As you can see, this end is running out completely. Just take it off in sections. Right, I've got down there fairly quickly, and I know without looking, and that's going to be quite rough. It's a bit soft in area in this wood as well, so I mean that doesn't help. People say, I can't get a clean finish, so same with all the bases you part off. No. If you go slowly, and I mean slowly, fibres will be cut cleanly. I'm not going down any further than that because I want you to see the contrast, hopefully. And yes, you can. You can see they're really torn, and that's clean. And that is purely by going down, same tool, but really slowly. So that is one thing you can do with a parting tool, is go down really slowly, and that will give you a nice clean finish. Finish at the moment, doesn't matter. Right, an apple is roughly, if you look at it, they vary from variety to variety. thirds and 2/3. Which end do I turn first? The bottom end first, because that is the most, sorry, the top, because that is the most rounded. As you go in towards the bottom of an apple, it curves in more. What I'm bothered about is the largest surface area. So that's why I prefer to do the top first and lay the bottom down here. So, and this will become a lot clearer when you see how I'm going to hold it. So again, same speed. So I've just got to put a visual on for yourself. So this is going to be the top, which is roughly a third. Again, just eyeballing it. So again, spindle gouge just to roll it round. So again, just pick up on the bevel, sweep the handle round. So again, stop the lathe to just move that in. And I can just change the angle slightly on that as well. So, and getting this curve is something that will happen. It's just practice, just like anything, sports or anything, you get used to that. And a lot of times I use my lower body because I've got that handle to my side, so I tend to use my lower body as much as anything. Move that back, and also I'll take that out because they're really good for stabbing your elbow. Also make sure it's locked off as well. So this is going to be, like I say, the top. So I need the top part opening up where the stalk would go in. So again, I'm just using pointing the spindle gouge and just hollow it out slightly and just spin it round. Doesn't need a lot. The other thing then is somewhere to place the stalk. And I can blame Wendy for this because she's not here tonight. I don't turn my stalks. What Wendy does is go around back of our unit where there's some hawthorn trees and takes a little branch off and just a little twig and puts a twig in the top. So that's my excuse for not having nothing to put in top tonight. A lot of people do turn them, don't get me wrong, but a natural stalk looks better. Prior to me demonstrate, I don't know if you saw, but I did a line up here to check, and that's why I just unlocked my head so I could just move it around slightly, because when I'm drilling, especially with a 3mm drill bit, if I'm not in line, it's just go to bend the drill bit, and you know what's going to happen with a 3mm drill bit. So again, I don't need it too deep, just deep enough to put a stalk in. Take that out, because if I drop that, I know what'll happen. So basically, I'm going to start now just shaping the base. Again, I've just measured this height here. And basically, if I put 3 fingers in that gap there, that's me and about centre height. Because each lathes vary. What I've done with my lathe is put a cable tie on. So at its lowest point, so I know it doesn't really want to go any lower, I can raise it up, but it won't drop down. Because that, as you can see, would drop down there. If you had that down there, it'd be highly dangerous. So I've been putting a cable tie and I've physically stopped it from dropping too low. So handy tips, I know there's a lot of experienced turners here, but I know there's at least 1 or 2 new ones, so it's something to just bear in mind. Right, the bottom part of the apple now. I've turned majority of this because I can do why it's held very securely in the chuck. Also, I can modify the shape. Can't go right way down because it's impossible. So just getting now, I'm just reaching the pencil line. And then just sort of blend that in. I know I want to come over a bit more at the top. Again, every variety of apple, as you know, slightly varies, and even the same variety can vary slightly, so not everyone is identical. Stopping there. Sometimes, because I can switch left-handed, I will go left-handed, just so it's easier. And again, looking at the back edge rather than front edge here. So that is where to look on your items. No, look at the front. Look at the front when you're starting the cut. Then look at the back. So that is basically an apple shape. So yeah, you can vary it slightly, but think of that, 2/3 there and a third for the top. And that's the easiest way. Do a part off down here. I could if I use a longer piece of wood, but I don't bother. I use a different method. And you'll see why I do the top part first. I've got a simple piece of wood here. Yeah. I've just got a long screw in. Don't matter because that'll go inside the chuck. Domed it out. So again, the largest surface area I've got, the better it'll fit in there. So think of an apple. It's a smaller diameter at the bottom, smaller surface area. So it actually works better in here. And that just screws into there. And basically, that's it. That's how I hold apples and pears and anything else that has a hole in the top. Would I have sanded first, the top part? I think we all know the answer to that is yes. Because I turned this piece of wood initially on my lathe and then I drilled a hole right through. So I know it's concentric with the outside of this after I domed it out inside. So then I just put the screw through and just hope it goes straight through and doesn't follow the weakest part. But yeah, that virtually does run centre. If you look carefully, you will see we have about 1.5 mil variation there. It's so small, I'm not worried about it. Because every time I put this in a different chuck, each chuck can slightly tighten differently, especially depending on how the jaws have been put on the chuck, which sounds very strange. But the correct way is to put your 4 jaws on your chuck, tighten them, but not fully, and then tighten your chuck key with nothing in it until all the jaws go together. And then once all the 4 jaws are tight, then you nip all the 8 screws up on the jaws and make them really tight. And that centres it up. I don't know if these jaws have been put on this chuck like that, so they could be slightly out. So it could be my screw what's out, my piece of wood in here. There's so many variables. I'm just going to bring that tailstock up just to give it some initial support while I do the roughing out. But I would have sanded that with starting at 120, 180, 240, 320, 400. Then cellulose sanding sealant to seal the fibres prior to putting on some wax polish. Sanding sealant is just to seal the surface so the wax stays on top rather than soaking in. I could just use wax, will look glossy, tomorrow morning be really dull. The other thing I brought as well is cut and polish, which is like Yorkshire grit as well. It does work if you've got a nice smooth surface, I find. If you've got a lot of details on, I find if you're not very, very careful and get your piece of cloth into every single tiny groove, you'll end up with a light ring round the following days. So I don't mind it on big open surfaces, but on detailed items, no. And that goes for both of them. Basically, they've come about, as you may know, from burnishing cream. Or some people may remember, or I might be the only one who remembers it, tea cut. what you used to use on old cars to, well, burnishing creams are virtually, it's a tea cut. This is almost like a toothpaste, because toothpaste is abrasive, that's how it cleans your teeth. So I won't recommend using that on your teeth first thing in the morning. I'd prefer toothpaste, tastes better. No, I've not tried it on a serious note, because somebody would say, oh, Phil's tried it. No. So you've got to be so careful nowadays what you do say, that you don't get yourself in it. And somebody saying, I tried it on my teeth and it's ruined it. You're now facing a £15,000 dentist bill. So you have got to be so careful when you joke now. So again, I'm just taking the waste away. Gaps opened up, so stop the lathe. Slight mismatch in here, but once that was sanded, that's going to be turned more, so it won't be that big a step. Also, I can just feather it in, so just very lightly pick up the bevel. The more I pick up slightly more as I move down to my right. So then go around a bit more of the base. So if anybody wants to sort of stand the apple up on the base, can be done. So again, just getting me two right round into there, rolling the flutes right over to 3 o'clock so they don't catch. Get rid of this now. Still got tailstock holding it, so still some support until basically a couple of seconds later when that will disappear. But again, turning it away. Just turn it away so it virtually pops off. Again, take tailstock away. And then just finally nibble this off. This is especially important if this was a finished base and you weren't having a hole in, like I'm going to put in for what Wendy puts is a clove. She puts one of them in the bottom of all my fruit. So just going on a little pimple there, which means I can see where the centre is, just down a fraction. And then hold it on there. So again, just going very lightly, small cuts, just large enough to take the clove. Sand, seal, etc., etc. One thing I do next is, put this back in and swap them over, is put a hole in the bottom so the clove can go in. Sometimes I use a handheld one with a small bit, but with this one, now I'm going to use the lathe. Again, just see maybe when I just put it in there, it just sort of raised up slightly, so something's just not 100%, and that could be my Jacob's chuck here. So, as you can guess, sand, seal, and everything else. Right. Which gives first for the apple in the culvert. That's it. So, that's a very simple apple. Now you can imagine if I go in that way, it might be better showing it from overhead. If I go in that way, there isn't as much surround it. As you can see that way, once it's screwed in, it virtually sits right up. Is that best angle? Sits right up to the very edge. Thin point, no. Unless I made another chuck, what brought it, but that is not as secure that way. So that's why I turn the largest surface area dome part first, and then go on to the other. I'll hand them round, then you can have a look if you like. But you have to appreciate. Do you want me to hand it round, that is? Yeah. I thought I'd better just ask in case you say, no, because with where things are at the moment, it's what you can and can't do, or what people do like you're doing. So that's a simple apple. This one. Right, I'll glue this. Tools. They were all carving tools. They were the bent shape ones, everything, spoon carving tools with a lot. I says, these are my turning tools. I says, no, the carving tools. He says, I've been having diggings when I've been hollowing out my bows. I thought, no wonder. And the total length was about this long. I'm surprised he's not hurt himself, to say the least. But he said, I've been sold these on eBay as turning tools. So somebody had basically conned him. So I've just taken them few cuts to find out how close I am to being round. Flat there, 3 flat, so a bit more. Again, this is a piece of wood I prepared myself, so just roughly on the bandsaw. But what you can do is use sound. You can hear that really clicking. Also, if I get rid of the shavings, you may see they're fairly short, but in time they'll get longer and longer, and the noise will diminish as well. So clean that up. So let's just have a look. I mean, you can see Same's getting longer now, so that gives you a fairly good clue that we're almost round, if not totally round. just a slight flat there, but clocks, it doesn't matter whether it's a clock, barometer or anything in that line, they're all the same for inserting them in that respect. So I've just got a skeleton clock here.
We've lost sound again. We've lost sound again. We have lost sound again. No sound from the demonstrator.
But always make sure you just don't go in once, you go in twice. So, because going in a long way with a parting tool is not good, just going in one cut. I want some slack in there so it doesn't bind. The other thing to take into account is the distance between the rubber band and the face snare. So again, I'm about 3mm to 4mm. So I've got to take that into account when I'm coming out here. So I want the face to fit flat on here. So come out about that far, so before I put any detail on. The other thing to sometimes think about with leads is sometimes, not on this particular style, but on some of the others, the actually metal part at the back here have a bezel what fits over, but it doesn't go all the way. The bottom part around the back here is more prominent. So sometimes you've got to cut a little recess just in this part here so it fits in properly. But with this style, you don't need to worry about it. So now I can do some decoration. First thing I normally do is put some V-cuts in, but again, just bring my twist out slightly. So my skew sits flat on there. And just cut a couple of these. Just for pure decoration. And again, going very, very lightly, just to clean it up, because as you can imagine, getting abrasive paper in there is impossible, and then also it will start to make it curved rather than crisp. Go to bring that twist around completely, and then just raise it up slightly as well, and just get my parting tool, because you can see there's a piece missing there. So I want to know where that flat is going to be. So, what time do you have your break now? Is it? Right, so I've got about 10 minutes left before you throw me out. So, right, I'm just going to go in here and just with a parting tool, just clean up that edge. I want to know where the back edge is going to be. So again, you'll have seen people put their tool on top to test if it's round. Not the best way. You can see now it's almost gone. There's just a fraction. Don't need to go a long way over or a long way deep. It's just so I can do a measurement. That's all I need. It's quite appropriate when I'm doing this tonight, because see there's a clock on the table over there, so you'll know how to make one after you've run it in the raffle tonight. So now, bow gouge again, I'm just going to put a concave on here. So as you may see, I've got the butt of a handle in my side. So I tend to use my body to roll rather than this way. You can do, doesn't matter. But I find you get a more natural curve using your hips than with your arms. Again, that could be left like that, but I don't. I use the point of a skew chisel and just put a little fillet in. So it just identifies that concave. And that's what a lot of turning is. What takes it from one level to the next level is actually just putting that fine detail in to lift it up. Sand it all over now. Could sand that at the same time. All through except for 400. Go right up to 320. Lead, have a look at this detail we've just put in there. If it's virtually rounded over or disappeared, after you've done 320, just highlight it again and then go to your 400, because your 400 is not going to remove the sharp detail upwards. If you're not careful when you sand it, it will do. I mean, normally, as you can imagine, I would sand, but they asked me, did I want my sander out tonight? Or vacuum. extractor, and I said, no, it's all right. Right. On the underside of that, we held it in the screw here, which is an 8mm drill bit. I normally use 8mm dowels, and you'll see how to fasten it together later. What I need to do is put an 8mm hole in virtually the side of the clock. I tend to have it where the grain is running upright, so that's why it's on its side at the moment. So I tend to lock my lathe and see if it's somewhere near. That's better lined up. Maybe not 100%, but somewhere close. If not, with holding it to the recess like I normally do, you could just loosen your jaw slightly and just rotate it very slightly, just to bring it round 2 degrees. I can't with a screw chuck. I can't do that. If I undo the chuck, sometimes the screw chucks has 4 flats on it, what sits in, so it may not seat properly. So I want to drill a hole. I'll just go from your side so you can see it. So I want to drill it in there, on centre height, and straight, and not lengthways. You can buy jigs. Remember, I'm Yorkshire. Don't like spending money if I can avoid it. Also, I don't like going to clubs and showing club members expensive pieces of equipment and hold something up. I've got a metal one, about £70 it is. How many members go buy a £70 jig for one item? So make your own. Important thing to really measure on this is from centre down to the bottom of the flat there. I'll then turn a piece between centres what's slightly longer. So let's just measure this lathe here. Centre height on this one is about 102mm from the base of the top of the tool rest there, tool post, to the centre there. I'd want a piece what was say 140mm long, plus how much is going down here. So in this case, I'd want a piece of wood what's about 200mm long, or 8 inches. I've already got some holes in this one, but forget about them. Again, this is actually an inch diameter, my thing here. This lathe is actually 25mm, because an inch is 25.5mm, so that's why it's a bit tight. So what I'm now looking for is that gap at the bottom of here on this. And that's why I say it's important to make the widest diameter the same length as that to the centre lead. You don't have to worry about is it high, is it low. Right, so I've roughly got to know how far it is there, off bottom. Take my drill bit out because this part is easier. Put my drill bit in there, in fact just run it through on this piece, because I'm feeling I might have done that 7mm in the past at one club. Right, now take it out, place it in. Because I want to go, I don't know if the cameras is good, how well it's good to show this. I want to go roughly the centre of the drill bit halfway on this flat. So about that point there. Also, as you can imagine, I don't want, I'm exaggerating here, I don't want the drill bit going in sideways. Can you see that over overhead? Yeah. So that's why I put the drill bit in there. So basically, I can line it up. Isn't this going to be 90 degrees spot on? I think we all know the answer is it's going to be somewhere close. So back in here, I'll then drill deep enough so a wood dowel or a piece of wood you turn fits in there. Could this be done on a pillar drill? Yes. And accurately, yes. If you don't mind spending several £100 buying a pillar drill. This can all be done on a lathe. That can be turned between centres on a lathe. So from the centre hole to the bottom of here wants to be from the bottom of, from the bed to the centre there. So that would just go right flush down onto that, and you know it's centre height every time. Different size holes in for different purposes. But yes, Leo, I do want to be on centre, so that's why I've got to check where it is on centre each time when I go out to club. For yourself, turn the piece, same diameter as your tool post there, length, base to centre, and drill a hole. Again, don't get me wrong here, you've got to drill a hole parallel through there rather than at an angle, otherwise that throws it off again. But something simple as that. Again, I'll just leave it there if anybody wants to come and have a look. Sand, seal, and then basically, that's a good time. Just perfect. See, I just timed it so I got it just right. That's more luck than management. Any questions, please come up and ask during this break. So, over to yourselves. Yeah.
Told you, but we're not having any tea or coffee.
No.
Not making any.
Right, that's all right.
People have brought their own.
No, nobody said. So
No, well, it's just
don't worry.
me that we
I'm going to say
haven't
we'll
said.
be having the kitchen, use kitchen and stuff like that.
Never mind.
No, that's all right. Yeah,
Kitchen's there, but
yeah,
still a little bit uncertain about
yes, yeah. I'm going to say it is. Yeah. Am I back on?
Anyone who hasn't got a piece, I'm ashamed of you. Come on.
Am I back on?
Cheers, Phil. On you go.
Right, thanks. So, right, we've just glasses. Right, when I've just stood back here, I can see a little ledge just inside on this outer ring, which I want rid of. So I'm just going back in again very quickly with particle. Again, I can't see what's happening there. I'm looking at the far side. So I can actually see that being removed now by looking on that back edge. So, sand, seal, everything else. Chuck key. Nice there. So again, no, this is going to work on this one. I've got a screw chuck in here. That's yes.
At that stage, when I do, what I always do is just get the drill and drill down that slope
Yes.
right through to the outside.
Yeah.
You've got a very clear mark of where you're going to be.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yep. That funny would just be said at break time, weren't we? That you work Lee's all the time, and John says I'm doing a totally different method to what he is, but we both achieve the same goal. But yeah, for anybody who's not sure what John's meaning, but I'm sure it's clear enough actually what he's said, is this recess here, get a drill bit and drill down there so you can actually see the whole. Am I on same? Yep. Drill through there so you can actually see then how much wall thickness is it at the far side. So that is another way. So, you know, we've got, what, 30 people here, whatever. If everybody had a lathe here tonight and each person did one of these, there'd be 30 different ways. There'd be some crossovers, but there will be totally different ways. And that's what you could say makes it interesting, because you could say we could have 5 demonstrators like myself from all over the world to do the same item 5 different ways. And that's what makes it interesting, to see different demonstrators to see how they make something. Have I finished learning? No, I'm still learning. You could say after 30 years of doing this, do I need to learn anymore? Yes, because it's somebody what comes along, what says, oh, I've done it this way. Then what I do is sort of think to myself, right, that can't go on, that can't go on, nothing can happen, let's give it a go. Or analyse it and say, if we do this, potentially an accident could happen. So, and that's what we do, and that's why new tools or different grinds on tools forever coming out, because somebody thinks they can do one better. The classic one is a skew chisel. That, I would say, is an original shape. Rectangle bar, flats, both sides. Then the rolled edge skew came out, so it was rounded on both the short point edge and the long point edge. Why? Because when you go in on a tool rest, if it's any nicks in, it will find them, and then if it hits a nick, that will be reflected on your piece of work. Rolled edge one, smooth, nice and smooth one, just like using a round bar. Totally different. But then, if you cut a V-cut on a spindle, you use it long point down. It's got a roll on now, it's not sitting flat. So then that was the second one. So the third version was rolled on the short edge one, so it slid on your tool rest when you're doing a planing cut, flat on the long point, so you could cut V's. What happens next? Oval skews. Again, rolled edge, flat edge, variations of that. Then Corwin Way of Axminster is designed, well, he's not designed, he's copied by permission a German skew chisel, which is tapered. So it starts at, say, 3/4 inch bar, it tapers down to 1/2 inch, and a very, very short handle. And he says for himself, it makes it lighter, so you hold it lighter on the work rather than a heavier tool, and then put more weight onto the work, which makes it more difficult to use. Where's it going to end? There's 10 varieties at the moment, I'd say. When's it going to be 15? When's it going to be 20, 30? I think if I come back in another 30 years, and I'm going to be 92 lead, so good luck, we could be looking at another maybe 5 to 10 different varieties of skew chisels. All I need to say is a bow gouge as well. Standard grind, fingernail grind, Ellsworth grind, Celtic grind, Irish grind. Basically, they're very, very similar. There's Stuart Batty. I've got to get that right because Alan was his father. He's over in America now, but they came from just outside Ripon. He believes in the 40-40 grind. For anybody who's seen him will know what I mean. 40 degrees on the bevel here. I'll load it up maybe easier, or if we're on Zoom as well. 40-degree bevel on the front edge. The rings here in that plate are also 40 degrees, and that's his preferred tool. Some people say it's best thing since sliced bread, it works. Some people say, no, my standard grind is just as good as what his is. It's personal choice. If it works better for you, use it. If you don't find it beneficial, because one is I've been asked a lot about the difference between a standard high-speed steel, a cryogenically frozen steel, and M42 steel. What is the difference? Cryogenically frozen or powdered metal technology lasts longer than a carbon steel or high-speed steel. M42 steel lasts even longer. But each time you buy one, you can guess the harder steels go up in price and price. So Do you sell all your old high-speed steel tools and buy over new brands of M42 steels? No. If it works, why change it until it's worn? I live in a realistic world. I don't work in a laboratory. Leads are supposed to last at least 4 times longer than a high-speed steel tool. For me, I'd say about 2 times longer. In a laboratory condition, like fuel on a car, miles per gallon, you very rarely achieve what the manufacturers say miles per gallon. And this has been used on one particular type of wood, very light cuts, and yes, in laboratory conditions, like I say, it lasts 4 times, 2 twice as long as that, or 4 times as long, etc., etc. Try some. Off a mate, off a friend. Don't buy one until you've tried it, and then you can sort of think, oh, yes, it's a vast improvement. Let me buy one. In fact, I was talking to a couple of gentlemen, or 3 gentlemen outside this when I came, and they said exactly the same as I say. With the M42 steel, it will last longer between sharpening, but it's not as sharp. It's sharp, don't get me wrong, but not as sharp as some of the softer grades of steel. You can get a sharper edge, which means a cleaner cut. So it's always a compromise. And for me, change tools when you've worn one out. And then if you think it's going to be beneficial, buy one. Because for new, if that was carbon, I think it's £40. M42 steel, £80. So it's double the price. But it may last 3 times as long. So in financial terms, it's worth it. To scrap all your regular tools and buy a new set, don't. And that's me. Am I employed by a manufacturer of tool manufacturer? I think you can guess with me saying that. No. Will I be? No. So back to the clock. So again, 2 cuts you can do. You can do a pole cut. I tend to use my tip. Don't talk when you're turning. Or some people use the side winch. It blunts it very quick that way. I prefer to use either a push cut or a pull cut, but using my tip. Now some people say push cuts are hard because they don't know if they go to miss the cut, get it just right, or take a large piece off. Find the bevel first, so handle right back, so the tip of the tool's not actually touching the work. Push your handle round until it starts cutting. Once it starts cutting, that's the angle you need. Slide it back carefully on the tool rest, so it's just rubbing, then move it over a millimetre, then push forward. Once you get used to it, you can just look down the bevel and line it up with a piece of work and know how much to go take off, but that is like most things in life. It's just experience. So, before long, somebody's going to say, Phil, I hope somebody's going to say, Phil, are you sure that's not going to come off? Not yet. But I need to know what diameter it is. And that's why once you've set leads, you don't change them. I can look at this side and see where it is. It's around there. So I'm just going to do it with a lathe off. I can just see roughly where it is. So I'm just going to put a pencil mark on and do it by hand to give me a basic idea of where I want to be. Check it. So I'm on basically that line there. So I was just saying as well, it could be taped up on the other side. I don't bother. I'm not saying I've got the best hearing after the jobs I've done, but you can sort of hear it. So I'm just going to go slightly on that outside that pencil line. Because one thing about leads is the insert doesn't go all the way through, it only goes part way through. So again, I'm just going to get a visual, which is bottom of that bit of a chamfer there. Now parting tool. I'm just going to drop that tool down slightly So just below centre, so the tip of a tool is on centre height. That's why a tool rest can't be one positional, it's got to move up and down depending on your tools. I'm now going to go in at a slight angle. And this is where you listen. Again, always take a relief cut. Just come back, start that other cut again. If I'm unsure, I can just do a check, visual check over the top. I won't do that when I get any lower down without stopping the lathe. Now, what's going to happen, is it going to come off and fly all over the room? No, because it will go forward onto a chuck, but it's a matter of stopping prior to it going through. Right, did you hear that? It's just strange sound. Stop. That still could be 2mm wall thickness. I can't budge it, so it's not coming off yet, but it's very, very close. Remember to keep taking them tiny cuts to keep that groove open. And once you get used to it, you tend to go all at once. That's still firm. Let me just check. Again, stop the lathe because I want to check from the far side. I don't want to be... If it comes loose, you've got to think this is a good inch thickness, or 25 mil. It's an inch and a quarter, 30 mil. I've not got 30 mil. I've only got about 5 mil, about 3/8 between there and there. It can't come off. It can twist over, but normally it goes onto the chuck. But I'm just visually looking where it is, and I want to just bring that out slightly. I want to make that cut wider because it's going in and that is on the outside in there. So I just want to bring it out slightly. So again, it's listening. I can come up at 1600, bring it down to 1000. I know you can set these lathes so you can just press a button and it drops it from one speed to the next. I find the ones with a knob on the rear stats a lot easier than the Nova lathes to adjust the speed. I'm on solid wood at the moment. Changing again. That's definitely changing. Stop. I normally myself, I've done so many, doesn't mean it can't go wrong, because it can. I tend to go through it. But when you're learning something like this, right, now you can hear it. In fact, I'm just going to leave the lathe just running slightly. You may see it wobbling. That gentleman in that maroon coloured top, and I'm not very good with colours, so pardon me if it's not maroon. Yep, right. If you've got it on the side camera, at the very top, don't know if you, is it coming on side camera there or not? It may not be. But let me take the chuck off. I was going to show you that you'd actually see daylight through one area, but that's come off now. You say, but you've a ridge in here. But also, I'm not going to do that at the moment. We're going to do the base first, because the base is already on. But actually that is not tighter fit than what I want. So I'll have to use some special equipment to resize that, which I'll show you. But while we've got this on, let's do the base. No point taking this off to put that on and then putting this back on again. So again, cross grain timber, think of outside of the bowl, we start at the base and work towards the top. So I'll just say, when I worked in engineering, I'd had my foreman back today. He won't be allowed to work in industry, because once when I was in engineering, I'm just going to switch this off to explain. You are always supposed to swing that round 360 degrees if you're an engineer, because you could have an odd-shaped piece of metal on and you have a big carriageway, and we could be talking of lathe, we'll wait from this room here, and several ton of metal on the lathe. If you did spin that 360 degrees, it used to come and kick you. You can't do that now, you'd be locked up for it. But I said, ow, Dick, that hurt. He says, if you just switched that lathe on, you wouldn't have complained, because you wouldn't have been here. He says, that could have come off and hit you. So he says, don't complain about me kicking you in your butt. You only kicked me about 2 more times. No, I didn't turn around anything back, but I learnt very quickly. If I didn't do things by the book, by what he wanted, because he had very high, nobody on his watch ever had an accident. He was so straight. Nowadays, it'd have to be, Mr. Greenwood, could we have a little quiet word, please? Do you think you should have turned that round? So, yes, was it wrong in nowadays? Yes. Did we bother? No. We just thought, we'll do things by the book, then we won't get kicked. So, he instilled in me safety. Always comes first. Check, recheck. Especially after you've had a break. Because it won't be the first time that you had a piece of metal on your lathe, not a big piece, and then somebody thought, oh, I just want to use that lathe, throws away on a break. I can just take his work off, put mine on, do a simple job, put his back on. What happened if they didn't put it back on correctly? So no matter what we did, if we went away for a lathe, even for 5 minutes, we had to go through every single safety check from scratch. Was the speed same? Was it held securely? Etc, etc. Right, so I've just fluked face into the centre again. Just get rid of that bump, which is where the screw's been. I dissed this out slightly. Not too much. In theory, it could be calculated, and I'm not going to calculate it. The radius in there wants to match the radius on the outside, because we've got a hole here, which you can use a dowel and then match it up. So if you get that radius, the same as that radius, it should sit in there perfectly flat. Without it sitting on a flat and just getting a centre post, it should sort of cradle it. Bit more detail on here because it's too bland. Again, just getting that 2S round. It makes a big difference for clubs, demonstrations, for competitions, or selling if you just put some fine detail on. Something as simple as that can make a difference from getting first to getting second if you didn't put them 2 fillets on there. So it's always worth just putting them little fine details on. I think you know what I'm going to say now. Sand through overgrades, sanding sealant, wax, etc, etc. So that's the base completed. So that's one base. The clock is a bit tight. Right, that is flat there. I don't need to put bigger jaws on, because luckily with these jaws on here and the size of clock I use, them jaws grip. Yes, don't get me wrong, I'm gripping on the outside here so it's parallel rather than tapered. Also sits flush against the face of the chuck as well. So it's not as secure as doing it with dovetails, but it works. You have got to be very, very careful now, because I just want to make this flat here rather than taper flat so I can reverse it and just enlarge it slightly. And that's why I'm not held on the back, because it's a taper, and I'm not putting this on jaws when it's got a taper on, because it's just going to come flying off. So I want to make that parallel. So again, I've got loads of room between the jaws and the wood. So again, just drop that down slightly so it's safe to do. So just line it up. Try to line it up with a lathe bed so I know it's going to go in parallel. Only need to go in about 6 to 8 mil. Don't want to go in too deep because there's a piece of metal that wants to meet this piece of metal if I go too deep. No, thank you. Don't want that. So again, it's always thinking, is it safe? Yeah, I'm happy to do it that way. A lead, that's all right. So again, now I can just enlarge this a bit. That's not flat. No, it is. So again, that's another good reason to give it a spin to make sure that everything is spot on. So then, back in. Very light cut. Again, can I go all the way down from this side? No. But I'm looking at the far side and that's as close as I want to go to them jaws. So it can be reverse again. Are you better making another template like I made for my jaws for each particular size of clock? I think you know the answer is yes. But not virtually, with a bit more just in that centre part. There. Stay. There's just that centre part there, what wants to come out. Now I can look which way. I've got a lot more flat in there, so that is safe to go back that way. Once we clean that tiny bit out, I'm happy. Do I think at work, when I'm working for myself, oh, I'll go in that parting tool a bit further and just take it from more in this first side as I did before? No. I'm working the same way tonight here as I would at work. I don't take risks at work because it's my livelihood. If I have an accident, I'm out of work, and when there's no wood turner, should be nipping down here and say, can I have a replacement for Phil, please? So that lead fits in there nice and smugly. And lead, don't get me wrong, it needs to be correct way up. So normally it's fitted to the stand and glued there prior to fitting the clock face, so you know it's sitting vertical. But lead, I get a wood dowel, 8mm, 8mm in the base, and put that on there, and that lead is a clock with a base. So I put it there. In fact, I'll do it right way, so Steve won't be getting complaints about his photography. And I can disappear out of a shot as well. So, but that would work for a clock, it would work for a barometer, it would work for several items. That could be a picture frame, thinner piece of wood, but lead, don't make that parallel all the way through. Make it wide at the back so you could put a round photo in, put a backing board in, and then you'd have a picture frame. So that can be several items. Tonight, it's more giving you ideas of how to, or processes how to do it. If now me and John switched over and John to make one, totally different, I bet. I bet there'll be very little crossover. But John would achieve the same thing as I've achieved it, but in a different way. Who's the best one? I don't know. We're both same. It's both working safe methods. It's which works best for you. Any questions on that? Because no, you finish about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Yeah, I'm 2 minutes early, so you need to ask. That's it. Keep me going for 2 minutes. You could do. That's the other method. Why am I? Have I got some? I think you know the answer. Yes. They cost 60 to 100 and some pound. Now, for anybody starting out or on a limited budget, it's a big expense. Luckily, Lee-size clocks fit on there, and it's safe. I mean, if I tighten that up and tighten that up fully, I cannot physically pull that off. I'm also pushing on with my party too. I'm not pulling, so. But yes, code jaws means you could put that on, grip it, He'd have access all the way through, but at a price. Like I said, I know one of my colleagues used to demonstrate, but he used to bring to clubs very expensive equipment or equipment what was no longer available. I didn't disagree with him, but it's something I won't do, because I could bring equipment to say, right, this piece of equipment to do this job has cost £1,500. I don't think there's any members in this club what's going to raise their hand and say, can I buy one, Phil? So why do I want to bring equipment that people are going to have to buy, spend lots of money, especially new turners? I know we have got a fairly new turner here. Do I want to say to that young gentleman, the equipment I've used tonight has cost £1,500. His mother's never going to talk to me ever again. So, no, father. So, but everything I've used tonight is what basic equipment you need for starters. So that's why I try to keep it as simple as possible. Yes, you can buy a metal version from Axminster Power Tools. A fruit chuck, I think they're about £40. That's cost 5p for a screw and some waste wood. Corwin from Axminster, he does it slightly different. He has a longer piece of wood in, and it's hollow all the way through, but on a slight taper. So what happens is he gets his apple or pear and pushes it into this tube, and at some point, because it's tapered, it will grip on it. But then he goes through the the headstock at this end with a round piece of stick with a point on. So when he puts it in, he brings the point right through, lines it up on the base, squares it off, and then pushes it into the tube that way. If you look on Axminster Woodworking Rosary or something like that, it's called. But if you type in Axminster into YouTube, you'll see, look for a video for Corwin Way doing apples and pears. And that shows his method of using a tube to virtually grip it in like that. And then that's how he does the other end of it. Two different ways. So all achieve the same thing. Most important part is it's safe. You could say holding flat on lem on the flat part there is not safe. Yes, unless you do something really bad. And if you go to do something that bad, it's going to come off there. It's going to come off any other method as well you use. So, but if you say to it's not going to hold on there, try it like I did. Pull it. If you can't pull it off. Some people say, put a rubber ring round it as well, so it gives more grip. No, I don't like that. I don't like, because one person has now put a rubber band round the chuck. I don't like it. Why? Don't do this. Lathe is off. I'm not thinking to switch the lathe on. But if I put my hand there on that chuck, it slips on my hand. It doesn't grab my hand. If that was rubber all the way around there, I think you know what's going to happen. It's going to pull my hand. So some person said, right, it protects you from, if you have your jaws really wide open and these parts, from catching your hand if it's a rubber band on. It may do, but it may also grab you and pull you in. So that's why I don't like to see, because some people use inner tubes off motorcycle tyres. I don't like it. Another person could say, I prefer having a piece of rubber, catching a piece of rubber than my hand, but my hand will just rub on there, rubber, I'll pull it through, which could be quite dangerous. So get another turner, he may say, yeah, put some rubber on, far safer than bare metal. What if you could say to yourself, hope it's safe, don't do it. You know it's not. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. A bit like Corwin's with using. Yes. Yeah. The other way is different diameters. The other way as well is like a spring chuck. Not the best way to describe. Piece of wood, hollow it out, then to the diameter you would sort of turn your apples or pears at, say 75 mil or whatever, 3 inches. Hollow it out, make this wall here about 1/8 of an inch diameter thick all the way through. Cut some slot, well, drill some holes round the circumference. I think John knows where I'm going here. Cut some slots down into the holes here, so and then you get a Jubilee clip, put your apple in and tie to the Jubilee clip, and that is another type of chuck. There are so many on the market. It's which one do you buy? Which one do you use? One that's convenient for you. Like I say, you could spend about £70 on the metal version. Yes, the metal version has got bushes in of different sizes, 10, 8, 6 and 3s. So you just take the bush out and put in a 1 inch hardened. £70, 50 pence. Once them holes gets worn, firewood, make another one, 50 pence. So you can make a lot of these for the price of a metal one. And so if I ask you how many will spend £70 on an item to do that, raise your hands, anybody who's got £70 on a metal version. There's not a single person. How many person will make a wood one to do this? I think we all know the answer. Most of you is nodding anyway. So yes, you get as much pleasure out of making something like that. Think, oh, I could drill holes. You could make a clock face for a clock movement to fit in. Now, it's got to be fairly thin because of a clock movement, or you make a recess. And sometimes you can use basically ceramic tiles, what used to have numbers on years ago. I don't know if you still do them or not. If that was a solid piece of wood and you wanted to put 12 holes in, representing each hours, line that up there, use your indexing facility. So you click it in number 1 position, lead, drill, unlock, next position, lock, drill, unlock, drill. So you've got 12 holes equally spaced around the outside. Could you step it out with a pair of dividers? Yes. Especially if you ask Steve about the dimensions and say, can you tell me what the difference is to be? He'll tell you degrees and size with your knowledge. I shall with my knowledge, but engineering is about 40 years ago now since I did it. So I don't use it every day, so it slips your mind. But that is one way to do a clock face, by using something as simple as that to drill 12 equally spaced holes in. Or 4, 12, 3, 6, 9. Or for purely decoration, to use even on a bowl edge or on side of a bowl to have, say, something like sycamore, this is oak, and then use some walnut plugs. So you drill your holes and then you put walnut plugs in to give a contrast. Like anybody who knows monkey puzzle. Light round the outside we've done predominantly, then you've got all the knots running around the circumference. You could make a feature like that with just using contrasting pieces of wood. Could be the same wood what's been dyed. So there's lots of ways, or fill it with resin. Resin is another popular one now, to drill holes and then fill it with resin. But that simple jig to keep it equally spaced, could you just drill it by hand? We've put in, say, the toe west there. I'd say no. Some people would say yes, because you could make a wood toe west with a little dip in it, and then put your drill in the little dip, drill, again with the indexing, move, drill. Lots of ways. But yeah, something simple as that. Don't need to be that diameter. I've got one what's about half that thickness, but it's a 4 3/4 inch stem toe west. So, any more questions, anybody? Or no? Nobody wants to ask me anything, John, so I can say over to you now. So, I know.
Phil, once again, thank you very much for interesting.
Yeah.
You're right, there's a myriad
Yeah.
most everything in woodturning and indeed in woodwork.
Yeah.
And I do thank you. I think I also should thank the techies at the front here. We are gradually getting there. Technology to make it better. And I do thank them because it's beyond me. I'm a dinosaur as far as that.
Yeah. And thank you.